I collect vintage books, and in this one I found a dried four-leaf clover, and I haven't seen one of those before, so that's very special. And I want to read the page that it's on and tell y'all that I collect vintage books about race. This book was written by Howard W. Odum, a white gentleman, and he does call out white people despite being white himself, but he's really specific about calling out white Southerners, which is something you even see today. This chapter is called The Role of Outside Agitation, and in the attempt to explain the intensity and sweep of the new crisis of race tensions, a substantial part of the evidence was clearly the psychological reactions to what the South, the white South, considered outside interference. They are trying to make us abandon our fundamental policy of race segregation, they would say. If they would just let us alone, we would work out our problem. That's something that's happening today. Like, they're banning books about race because they think that if we stop talking about race, then racism will stop happening. Didn't work in 1943, is not working now. It continues. We won't have any trouble with the Negroes down here if you'll just hush up and let us alone. Point of clarification, Negro is a word that starts with N that refers to black people, but it is not the N word. That is a different word. It's a slur. Shouldn't use that unless you are a black person. But don't use Negro either. It's still an outdated term to refer to black people, and it might be written in text. If you're not black, you can say it, but like, don't. Some of it is scathing. If, for instance, there was great pressure, both intense and widespread, to urge the complete abandonment of racial segregation, and this was known to the South, then that it was, in many places and with millions of Southerners, tantamount to a declaration of violence, because the South was on record as being willing under no terms to do what was wanted. So the context of this book is that in the 1940s, during World War II, there was so much conversation being had about race and racism. During the 1940s and during World War II, when there was so much demand in the defense industry that the defense industry had to be desegregated in order to have black workers wanting to show up for work and getting paid fair wages. They were not given all of the rights, just less oppression, and people were not having it, specifically folks in the South, but in the North too. And the reason why this chapter is called The Role of Outside Agitators is because there was this perception that the black folks who were in the South had no issue with racism, and it wasn't until they started to travel during World War II or their family members started to flee racial violence and came back that they were made aware of their oppression, which is ridiculous because every oppressed person has known that they were oppressed forever. It's not like they had to be informed by somebody else. Imagine thinking that black folks had to find out they were being oppressed. Yikes. Anyway, so the book continues. There's this excerpt from James Trenslow Adams' American Tragedy, which says, "The race problem, centered as it has been in southern states, has been a cyst on our national anatomy. We must break it up, absorb it. Like a wounded man who, in his pain, lashes out against those who would help, the southern people turn on the proponents of any kind of change and resent any discussion of the problem. This is the deepest tragedy in the American history. A people of virtue and courage who have been blinded by it." So this chapter goes on and on, as does the entire book. It's really fascinating, and one of the arguments it's making, we have to remember that World War II was a lot closer to the Civil War than we are now, was this idea that if we desegregate, that if we move forward in terms of racial progress, then we will end America as we know it. And there's an argument to be made there, but what they're essentially saying is that there's no way to enforce desegregation without violence, bloodshed, and another civil war. And, you know, it kind of happened. We had the civil rights movement. There were a lot of violence. There was a lot of protesting. There were a lot of lives lost, a lot of violence, but I don't know, it's just something interesting to think about how we perceive race and racism today and how it was perceived back then. And that's why I love collecting books, specifically books about race from before the civil rights movement, because they are experimental, they are interesting, and a lot of them are written by white people who criticize Southern white people while also not criticizing people in the North. So this is Race and Rumors of Race by Howard W. Odum. It is out of print. I got it on Abe Books. I have a much larger collection, so if you want me to read it or read more from this book, just let me know.